You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Typhoon Chanthu, Philippine name Kiko, currently pictured on the screen. Another intensification phase possibly underway with an eye that's starting to clear out once again. By our analysis so far, it's reached Category 5 on 2 occasions. And, well, one might argue there's nothing stopping it from doing it a third time as it approaches the Philippines. At the moment, 140 miles per hour Category 4 is the intensity, and it's expected to pass just off the coast of Luzon and then through the Batanes Islands and onto Taiwan. Regardless of the actual track of the storm, the specifics of which is still a little bit unclear, and we'll get onto that soon, this could be a massive rain threat for the coasts of the Philippines, Taiwan and beyond, as well as those strong winds, of course. In the studio, my name is Nathan Foy here once again. I'm joined by my team consisting of Kin, Noah, Josh and Zenitsu. Hello to all of you.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, evening there in the Philippines. Your current time, is it 9 now or 8?
p.m.
8 p.m. I always get confused during our daylight savings times, whether it's 7 or 8 hours in front. So it's 8 hours ahead of UTC. So obviously there's a storm in front of us and we've got plenty of images to show you of it. But there's a lot going on in the world today. Just cross over to all of the views right now. There's the Atlantic Ocean. You can see Larry, still a Category 2 hurricane. Tropical storm warnings for Bermuda. And Tropical Storm Mindy formed yesterday and has already weakened to a depression over Georgia in the United States there. You can just about make that out on the screen. In the eastern Pacific, Tropical Storm Olaf is gathering pace and is probably going to become a hurricane and will seriously threaten the southern tip of Baja California, probably make a landfall there. And of course, our good old western Pacific, let's see, that's one image there. I'm trying to find the best one. There's the key messages for Larry you just saw. Here it is, a close-up showing the 2 storms active right now. Conson on the left-hand side, which is also looking pretty good, it has to be said. Could become a typhoon once again on approach to Vietnam or Hainan. Chanthu, which what you'll really notice on this imagery is still pretty small. And on its right hand side, Invest 96W, which according to the GFS model is going to have a say in the track of Chanthu and could help it deliver huge amounts of rainfall for parts of the East China Sea coasts, Japan mainly. What do we think about that?
Could be.
Okay, could be. So, looking at the Philippines right now, let's see what warnings we have currently in effect. I think it's this button. There's the Signal 1 warnings for Northern Isabela, Cagayan, eastern part of Apayao, the Babayan Islands, and the Batanes Islands. So, Signal 1's at the moment, and I'm not sure if we're expecting those warnings to be increased later on, but let's talk to Zenitsu. You're in the Philippines right now. I always forget exactly where you are. Manila area?
Yeah, Metro Manila.
What's your perception of Kiko, as the local name is, right now?
It looks stronger and... wait, no, it looks strong, not really that... the eye just needs to clear, that's all. We could be expecting more signal warnings to come within the next 48 hours or so until it makes a close approach or possibly a landfall. Um, this is also the first time Pagasa is issuing storm surge watch for a storm. We have those in effect for Cagayan, Isabela, if I'm getting this correctly, Batanes too, and Ilocos Norte.
Right. So a storm surge watch, have they indicated any kind of number of the height of the storm surge?
I believe 1 to 2 meters.
Okay. So that's a significant amount, and you would expect that from a storm like this, that's for sure. We've also got Noah with us right now, and you're often keen on analysing the storm structure itself, and maybe you could give us a little chat about what the storm is up to now and whether we might see another Category 5 peak later on.
Well, first on the Category 5 peak, I'm fairly sold on this doing another one. Currently, we see that it's finishing in our replacement cycle, coming out of it. And we have a pretty solid ring again of -75 or colder cloud tops around the eye, which is pretty cold at the current time, but it's gonna clear out if there's nothing happening if there's nothing weird happening with the core. And I think we're gonna see another Category 5 peak in several hours.
Well, what we
when
have
the eye is
seen,
gonna clear out.
what we have seen during the last two peaks is how quickly that actually happened. Is this going to be just the same? Has its structure changed very much since the first two peaks?
Well, the eye has become a little bit bigger, but it doesn't look like a big eye. Still, the eye was at times was, I think, only 4 to 5 nautical miles wide, so even pretty small for pinhole criteria. And after its first hour replacement cycle, which we don't really know what it was. I think it was a classic hour replacement cycle, but some people say it even was a merger hour replacement cycle. But still, after its first hour replacement cycle, the eye was still very, very small, pinhole sized. And now it looks a bit bigger.
Now, what we've been seeing with models and forecasts is that, well, the main change in the last 24 hours is that the official forecast model, forecast cones from the JMA and also the JTWC's cone took that dramatic shift to the east, didn't they? And now they're calling for. Let's just take a look at JMA first of all. There you can just about make out its cone calling for the storm to just pass east of Taiwan. Meanwhile, the JTWC is calling for a direct landfall on Taiwan via the Batanes Islands. And if that happens, they say that the storm would still be at Category 4 status by the time that happens. So we've gone from models saying yesterday that the storm was continuing to trend west and it would shoot the channel and move over towards the Hong Kong area. Now calling for the models and the forecasts calling for the storm to sweep upwards through Taiwan and onwards. Is this a complex forecasting situation?
Well, it seems to be that the ensembles that are taking the east are the stronger ensembles that don't make landfall in the Philippines, and if it makes landfall in the Philippines, it's likely to drift more towards the west. That's generally what I've been seeing with the storm.
Yes, and as it stands right now, you can see there that the storm will be passing pretty close to the coast of Luzon, but according to the JTWC forecast right now, the tropical storm force winds will barely reach the coast, and it will be the northern islands that will have the worst effects of the storm. And let's be honest, they've seen strong storms like this before. so perhaps a little battle hardened. But then moving on towards Taiwan, very large populations inside the cone. The 10% chance of 50 knot winds reaches, I think it's 62 million people right now, over parts of the Philippines, Taiwan, and the eastern coast of China, all the way up to Shanghai and beyond, I think. At the moment, at least Shanghai is already in the tropical storm range. But that shows that there's a big amount of threat, large amount of threat attached to this storm right now. We'll be able to take your questions during this hour of discussion as well. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. The first one from J.O. Is a landfall on Cagayan looking more and more likely? What do we think?
Can anyone hear me?
I can
Yes,
answer
we
that
can-
one
yes, we
if
can
my
hear you.
microphone keeps. Oh no, Zenitsu going for it.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, yeah, it's probably going. I mean, it's going to be likely either way. We have seen forecast cones shift towards the south. But who knows? Maybe it just makes a sharp north turn and just misses it completely. But that seems a bit like not that likely for now.
Are you saying you think the north turn is far-fetched or the landfall is?
I'd say the north turn
Okay.
for now.
The chances for a landfall in the Philippines remain probably just below moderate. I'm not going to say low, but probably just below moderate. I'd expect the storm to clip its tropical storm force wind field around Santa Ana and then move through and mess up the islands in the Luzon Strait. And that's sort of the model guidance right now, minus some models, especially the ECMWF. That's taken the storm a lot further north and a lot further east than most of the others, thus a much stronger storm than the models. But as Noah has said, if the storm was to be close to the Philippines, within close proximity, as in the tropical storm force wind field extending over the Philippines, you'd likely be seeing some disruption in the outer structure of the storm, maybe even the inner structure, depending on how small it is. And you might be looking at a weaker scenario. There's probably sort of a tightrope sort of thing that the storm can walk. If it's too far away, we're going to see a very strong storm in Taiwan, or if it's too close, then it's going to be a very strong storm for the Philippines. So it's kind of got to get that sweet spot.
Kin is showing us a graphic right now. That's for tropical storm force winds. Kin?
Yeah, I can see that more of the tropical cyclone force winds are likely over Batanes and the Babuyan group of islands, but we could also see that it is also likely on some part of the mainland Luzon.
Absolutely.
But if you look there, there's also Taiwan suffering the burn.
Whichever way the storm tracks Taiwan is going to get tropical storm force winds. You look at that, the minimums there look to be in the high 60s percentage-wise.
Yes, indeed.
And up the coast of China there, already some 40%, not far from Shanghai. But further south, some areas reaching around about 50 to 60% there already. That's for tropical storm force winds. And that is as of the latest update, I believe. Let's take some more questions. Is Conson's northern wind field causing Chanthu to move northwards?
No.
I know why they asked that, because we'll just switch back again. Conson has got that massive northern bulk there, that band, an enormous band on the northern side that some people might suggest might have an impact. But no.
I just heavily doubt that. So
It's that
it's
the thing that is
Oh.
causing Chanthu to move northward is that it's gonna round the nose of the ridge that is currently positioned somewhere south of Japan. And it's
yeah,
gonna go around that ridge, gonna get picked up by
it's
weakness, and then
it's
somewhere between Japan and China, it's gonna probably run into another big ridge and likely stall somewhere. But that's at that time it's already past Taiwan.
But that is a big question mark when it gets up there into the East China Sea, because I've seen some models so far, and it is calling for a stalling there, and goodness knows where we go from there in 5 days' time.
Yeah.
I guess that's something we'll just have to keep watching for. Sea surface temperatures aren't going to slow the storm down anytime soon, because even up there the temperatures are still around 28, 29 degrees Celsius, and it's 29 to 30 right now, all the way up to the northern part of Taiwan. So sea surface temperatures are never going to be an issue. Very warm indeed. Bobby says that they've been watching Chanthu and it has been continuously doing eyewall replacement cycle. Is this true?
yeah,
Well,
it
it
has
has
been.
done
Yes.
several one. I think it has done about it. It has so far. It has done 2 eyewall replacement cycles. That's because of its pinhole-like structure so far. When you got a pinhole, it's very easy to wrap around a concentric ring and close it off, and then you got
Yes.
a eyewall replacement cycle.
Well, if I could just say something about the hazards that could impact land areas.
Absolutely.
Pag-asa, yeah. Pag-asa is expecting heavy to intense with at times torrential rainfall over Cagayan, including the Babuyan group of islands, Batanes, and northern Isabela, while moderate to heavy with at times intense rains may be experienced over the rest of Isabela. Remember, this begins tomorrow afternoon. There could be more severe impacts for anything surrounding that within the coming days. Um, Winds reaching from strong breeze to near gale in strength are expected over the areas where signal number 1 is in effect. But take note that that is just as of the 5 p.m. advisory. Things can happen within the the 48 hours. And based on the bulletin itself, tropical cyclone wind signal number 4 is the highest wind signal that will be hoisted for the typhoon. And we haven't had a single signal number 4 this year, so this will be a first. But
Are you
all I
saying
can
that
say,
they're expecting to do that for this storm?
they're expecting signal number 4.
Wow. Is that saying that that's definitely going to happen at some point, or are they just saying that that could happen if the storm tracks directly over land?
They seem certain about it in the bulletin itself. Tropical, it says here, TCWS number 4 remains the highest wind signal that will be hoisted for this typhoon.
Interesting language there. We'll have to see. But I signal 4, that starts at what wind speed again?
If I could pull up that, I believe
I
that
think that
was
starts around
171.
171. And the
So I
impacts
think
of the
it's
wind heavy
so yeah, that they're saying that if the storm was to move over land, its current intensity is obviously signal 4 worthy. And there's nothing on the forecast that says it's going to weaken, so I suppose they're right. They'll probably do signal 4 for the Batanes Islands eventually.
Well,
You would think.
looking at the track. Oh. Well, first, before the track and before I read out the track and intensity outlook, basically storm surge is also a key factor in what could possibly be the damages of the storm. As you can see, Pagasa has issued a storm surge watch over areas in northern Luzon. Um, and storm surge watch basically meaning that storm surge of up to 2 meters can be experienced in those areas while the storm is ravaging the area. Um, so we've seen numerous we've seen storm surge from Jolina south, but
Yep.
what Pagasa is showing that it could be a meter higher than that, which is worrying somewhat because um, that would cause a bit of trouble for people living near the coast of those areas.
Well, Kiko, of course, is a lot stronger than Jelena was at landfall, even at typhoon status.
Yes, indeed. Um, and basically, the signal warnings remain at signal number 1, but we could see that change at the 11 p.m. update from Pagasi.
Yep, that might be true indeed. Looking back at the wide shot of the infrared again, Noah, when we're looking at the storm, we know it started off extremely small. Is it still at the very small end of tropical cyclones right now?
Not at a very small end, but it's not a really large storm. It's still rather small.
Well, it's smaller
I've
than
heard that
Jelena.
I've heard that the CDO diameter is about 100 miles, and that the influence diameter is about 400. But it looks, from the looks I've seen, it looks rather small storm. Yeah,
There's a
it started out
question.
extremely small.
Yeah, there's a question there. For a person who lives in the North Atlantic, which North Atlantic storm would be fit to compare with Chanthu? Which is an interesting question. I'm struggling to think of any personally.
For the current structure or the evolution in general?
I think right now.
Oh, right now. It looks a bit like Iota before clearing out its eye.
That's quite a good call, actually. Certainly a similar strength. But there we have it. So right now, Chanthu, which is the one on the right hand side with the slightly defined eye, which is probably going to get more defined shortly. 140 mile an hour winds, that's around 225 kilometers per hour, sustained with higher gusts. Currently central pressure around 930 millibars, and is expected to sweep past the northeastern tip of Luzon as it recurves northwards and then affect Taiwan. On the left hand side, that big mass is tropical storm Conson, Philippine named Jelena. It's just moved out of the Philippine area now and is headed towards the west, we could say vaguely, but it will probably go on to affect Hainan. But I think it's going to make landfall in Vietnam. The latest model forecasts suggesting that it could reach Category 1, maybe even Category 2 before it gets there. Sometimes storms can blow up in that area. We've seen it a few times recently. But nonetheless, it's probably going to be a big rain event over there for Vietnam, which is always seemingly these days getting hit by enormous rain amounts. But Taiwan could also get massive rainfall numbers, over 300 millimeters, quite possible, and even higher for areas around Japan if the long-range forecast is to be believed, when this storm goes about and stalls all over the place in the East China Sea. Let's get another question. When did Pegasa decide to begin issuing storm surge watches and warnings? Zenitsu, you said that they've just started with this storm?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe,
It started earlier
yeah, they started
at 11
earlier.
p.m.
Yeah, they did start at 11 a.m. shortly after the bulletin was released.
So was this a premeditated decision, or have they just decided, right, we're going to start issuing storm surge watches and warnings as part of our forecast package now? Just happens to be at 11 a.m. on September the 9th.
I believe, I think that's just, just um as part of their forecasting package, you know.
All right.
And I don't think it was anything pre-med. I mean, it could be, but it wasn't really done in public. So
Okay. Looking once again at the infrared imagery of the storm, the enhanced infrared and its relation to the Philippines right now. Massive amounts of convection all around, as you'd expect, but quite a lot of -80s wrapping round. Right now it looks like the northern side looking a little bit flaky there, but overall it's holding intensity at the very least. And actually, I should point out as well, I think it's still moving just about west or west-northwest, pretty slowly. The movement that we clocked earlier at our update at 6 p.m. Philippine time was, I think it was 11 miles per hour. It looks slower than that on those latest images. And just to get you some distances from land, to give you an idea of how close the storm is getting now, and I'm going to have that in a minute. So in kilometers, it is currently 374, just about, nope, 373 offshore. The closest point of land is near Palanan, which is in Isabela province, I believe. Some other places, 476 kilometers from Santa Ana, 514 from Apari. So that gives you a little idea of how far the storm is from land right now. Signal 1 warnings in effect. We heard a few moments ago that they could be raised later on tonight or tomorrow, as of course we're seeing those bands start to, the very peripherals start to reach the coast. And we had a visible imagery earlier on our storm update. Of course it's nighttime now, so no visible images at this time. But we're here to discuss everything really to do with Chanthu. We'll touch on the other storms as well. Send in your questions. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. Let's have a little look round and see what else is going on. I think the main story is still Larry apart from Chanthu. And you can see there the forecast track for Larry in the Atlantic. Hurricane watches and tropical storm watches in effect for Newfoundland. That is currently projected to be a tropical hurricane landfall there late Friday night. So that's probably something we'll be drawn to as well when that comes closer. So this is September, folks. We've got 5 tropical cyclones on the go around the world, and 2 of them hurricane equivalent threats, in fact potentially 3 with Olaf. And there is Olaf once again in the Eastern Pacific. Always a lot of things to look at in September.
Yep. This could also be a worrying sign for what could be to come for late season in the Western Pacific.
Yes, it's had that trend, hasn't it? A few occasions now where it's been loaded towards the end of the season. In fact, there was a statistic that in August, it was the first time that there had been no typhoons active in the month of August in the Western Pacific. That record goes back to the last time it happened, which was 1890, which is a very long time ago, and possibly might have missed a typhoon there. So certainly in modern records, that is quite an impressive record that there were no typhoons at all in August, and that's after last year, I think it was last year, when there was no tropical storms in July for the first time on record. So interesting goings on with the seasonality stakes right now.
I'm going to answer a few questions in chat. Has it started western? Slowly but steady, but
What
yeah,
was that?
I guess. Has it? I'm assuming Chanthu started its northwestern.
Ah, it's hard to tell at the moment. It's moving slowly, but I imagine it's just it's going too soon.
Also, here's one from one of our contributors. Question to the team: how often is Newfoundland impacted by fully tropical storm? I mean systems. I believe the last one was Hurricane Maria.
Hurricane who?
Maria.
Oh,
No.
no. I can't remember now.
Which
I
was in
think it's Igor.
2011.
Hurricane Igor, I think.
Really?
Igor's certainly one of the most memorable ones. But, you know, it happens maybe twice a decade on average.
You are somewhat right. Yeah.
They certainly get a lot of extratropical cyclones that are often from tropical storms originally. And Jacob says, do we compare Larry to Cindy of 1999? Now, oh, well, that's not showing Larry right now. That's showing Mindy. I'm trying to get the Larry imagery. They've all switched back to Mindy again. Whilst we were talking about that, okay, I guess we won't. I'm struggling to remember Cindy now. I know Gert was out there, a very strong hurricane. Cindy was another strong Category 4 that was out in the Atlantic. It had a long track, but I wouldn't really relate it to Cindy. It was further north and east. No. To be honest,
Also,
actually, Gert might be a better comparison than Cindy of that year. I would say so, because, well, I mean, it was stronger than Cindy, and they're both Category 4s, and Larry, I don't think will have a Category 4 tag on it by the end of its life, quite clearly, but it was weakening Category 2 as it approached Bermuda. It passed Bermuda to the east, then it weakened to Category 1, and then it's just glanced Newfoundland to the east as a tropical storm, turning post-tropical, so I reckon Gert's a pretty good comparison. Another question, do we think the Westpac is leaning more towards the early and late ends of the year? We've seen a super typhoon in April when it isn't supposed to happen. Is there any explanation of how this season has stacked up this year? Any theories on that?
So I usually with a late season, La Nina seasons tend to be a late season because in La Ninas you have more thermodynamically favorable conditions down in the deep tropics, but during peak season you don't have typhoons very far in the deep tropics, and so late season is usually more active in La Ninas. And from the early season there isn't much climatologically to explain there, but pretty much just has been a extremely strong, anomalously strong westerly wind burst that has caused that.
Surigay we're talking about there.
Yeah.
Yes, and you do tend to notice in the El Nino years that the activity is earlier on usually, isn't it? But I mean, I've heard rumblings that La Nina is set to continue next year, so who knows what that's going to bring. But looking right now, well, there's still a lot of this. I mean, it's still in the Western Pacific. It is still a little bit early. The peak of typhoon season is August 31st in terms of named storms. I've actually never calculated the peak of the season in terms of the stronger storms, but I would imagine it's later, quite significantly later. We're only on the 9th of September right now, so we've seen many very strong typhoons that have occurred in October, November, even December. So that could well be on the way. But right now, this is our wide shot of those two cyclones in the Western Pacific. Conson on the left-hand side had the Philippine named Jelena, has now left the PAR. And we have Chanthu, Philippine named Kiko, which is smaller but much, much stronger, with estimated wind speeds of 225 kilometers per hour. More questions. Is Conson developing a hot tower? There is a tower of sorts. Looks like there was one that initially blew up there, yes, on the last visibles, and that's just sort of flattening out there.
Before I answer another question, let me just correct myself. Pagasa did indeed issue storm surge warnings after Typhoon Haiyan struck the Philippines, so it's not a new thing. But
right.
it is certainly the first time, one of the first times that it's issued in 2021. So, for certain, do you think that the Western Pacific is leaning more towards the early and late of the late season of the year?
Yeah, we had that question, and we discussed that a little bit. That's the main part of what I was talking about in the last section there. But yeah, there's still a lot more to come. So just to remind people of the forecast track once again. This is from the JTWC, expecting the storm to peak again near Category 5 status, 135 knots they're saying, tomorrow as it passes east of the northern tip of Luzon and the Babuyan Islands, and then on to the Batanes Islands, probably with winds of around 150 miles per hour, which is where the super typhoon cutoff begins. And then a landfall into Taiwan, although that still might not be an actual landfall. It could move eastwards, which is what the JMA is suggesting. And then the track forecast becomes very uncertain after that, as a stalling motion is likely in the East China Sea. And a question about the normal average named storms in the Western Pacific in a season. On average, it's 27 per year. And just a brief look there at the JMA forecast as well, showing the track forecast for both of those tropical cyclones. It takes Conson pretty squarely now into Vietnam, and Chanthu off the coast of Taiwan, and looks like an enormous cone later on in that forecast track. Checking in once again with the latest infrared enhanced imagery. Those pink areas surrounding the center of the storm, those are the minus 80 degree cloud tops. The coldest and the likely the most intense part of the storm usually correlates. All those white areas, that's minus 70 degree cloud tops. In this part of the world you get them quite a lot, much more than you do in the Atlantic. All this would suggest that with an eye like that, which is visible but not very deep on satellite, would suggest a mid-range category 4 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. Keep your questions coming in. We're taking more comments and information over the next 20 minutes. And we'll also show the model runs in just a moment as well, to show you exactly what the GFS has been saying and how it happens, which I think might be of interest to a lot of people. But sometimes it takes me quite a while to load all of that up. A lot of data that has to be processed before we can bring it to the broadcast. But we'll bring up a 7-day loop for you shortly. But right now, general movement west-northwest. Current position is roughly, just get another fix on this right now, it's around 16.1 north, 125.8 east, and that puts it now approximately 364 kilometers from the closest point of land in Isabela province in the Philippines. Kin, any information for us there? Oh, Kin's gone away just for a moment. In which case, I will continue to wait for the models to load, and then I'll be able to show you not only the wind estimates in the next 5 days to 7 days, but also the rainfall estimates, and some places are pretty high. Let's just have another sweep around the world whilst we wait for that. The Atlantic looking like this right now. Once again, you can see Larry and Mindy. Maybe we can pitch up that imagery just a little bit. No, actually, that's the edge of the imagery. But Larry's still looking pretty decent, it has to be said, there. And the bulk of it about to reach Bermuda. Rainfall totals will start to take a hike there. Mindy is already decaying there and is going to be a remnant pretty soon, I should think. The Eastern Pacific, something to watch there. Olaf, which could make a hurricane landfall on the southern tip of the Baja California Peninsula. And that could become a Category 1 hurricane. It's currently getting towards that status. It was 65 miles per hour the last update. I wonder if they've changed that. They have put it up to 70 miles per hour now. That's not a surprise as far as I'm concerned, really. In the Eastern Pacific, and looking back towards the Western Pacific view, that's a wide shot showing everything that's going on. And those who are familiar with the full disk imagery like this, you'll note that some storms tend to be much larger than Chanthu. That's just one good thing about the storm, is that it's not huge. But those who are affected by the core of it will receive very strong winds, devastatingly strong winds. Now I think the model run is ready, so I'll be able to show you a little walkthrough on what's going on with that right now. Here's the current view. So the GFS initializes the two storms. You can actually see that it initializes Conson as a 80-mile-an-hour typhoon, would you believe? Which is interesting because I think the JTWC still have it at, where are they? They've still only got it at 60 miles per hour, but the model initializes it at 80. And for Conson, for Chanthu, they initialize it a little low because they tend to initialize the stronger storms a little low, 125 miles per hour, although that is pretty much what the what Pegasa are going with right now. let's take it forward a little bit there. So you can see both storms quite clearly in the picture. Chanthu moving on through the Batanes Islands, and Conson there strengthening substantially. That is 90 miles per hour there, approaching Vietnam. So could have a chance of Category 2 before making landfall there, south of Da Nang, I think. I get my names mixed up in Vietnam. It is Da Nang. And then you can see further north what happens with Taiwan. Now the JTWC have an actual landfall, but if you watch the GFS, either of them could turn out true. Still very strong there, Category 4 most likely, and then starts to weaken a little bit as the interaction with Taiwan will take its toll into the East China Sea. And you'll also note, if I could draw a little illustration here, once the storm starts moving up, here is 96W, and that starts to move up there as well. It's already waiting for Chanthu, and that's delivering tropical storm force winds as well. It's a very messy situation, really, and it all gets consumed by Chanthu eventually. I didn't mean to draw that line. And there it is, much larger in the East China Sea, stalling and then strengthening again to typhoon status on approach to the Japanese islands on day 7. That's a pretty interesting thing to see. So I'm not sure exactly how that will come about. I would think there's a lot of uncertainty about it. We're now joined by Isaac and Walter. Hello to both of you.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good evening here.
Morning over there in the US, evening where Walter is in Hong Kong. I'll just take us around the rest of the world in models. The Indian Ocean, I heard rumours that there's some tagging going on for the Indian Ocean right now. There is a little circulation there.
Yes.
So maybe a little something there in the next few days. And just to run about and show you the whole world picture over in the Atlantic, the satellite's still up there. Let's turn that off just for a moment. You can see Olaf and a probable hurricane landfall shortly, and then you have Larry straight up there through Newfoundland with a sizable hurricane wind field, and then merges with another system, becomes an enormous extratropical system along Greenland and Iceland, and off it all goes. Very messy situation. Long range in the Atlantic, not much going on. Eastern Pacific, not much. Western Pacific, you'll still have Chanthu. Back to the latest imagery then, which Isaac is showing another view. What are we looking at here, and what are your thoughts on what you're looking at, Isaac?
Well, we're looking at obviously Typhoon Chanthu right now, which is clearly undergoing an eye wall replacement cycle. You can see that obviously with the eye temperature not being nearly as clear as what it was about 10-12 hours ago. Really clear eye. Now it's obviously clouded over. Noticing a little bit deeper convection firing off in the central dense overcast, the CDO of the system. So I'm going to be really interested to see what the storm looks like after it completes this, if it does complete this eyewall replacement cycle here. And obviously this is not going to be any good news if it does complete it, because it gives the storm a better chance of becoming stronger, or at least going back to category 5 intensity, which is done so far 2 times in its life, as it nears Luzon.
It has indeed. I'm not sure what the last storm to reach category 5 3 times is, at least in the Western Pacific.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Oh, maybe Main Cut. I wanna say Main Cut, but I'm probably wrong.
I don't think so. It was category 5 for 3 days.
It was Mankut was category 5 before striking Luzon. It didn't weaken to category 4 or something, if I remember correctly.
A question for you, Walter, I think that you could answer. Has China, Hong Kong, and or Vietnam issued any warnings for Conson? At least you could answer us for Hong Kong.
Hong Kong, not yet, but the Hong Kong Observatory has said that they may issue the standby signal number 1 warning. They said they will do it today, yesterday, but right now there's practically nothing. Yeah, so I think the observatory is being lazy, apparently.
Oh dear.
But Macau, on the other hand, has hoisted the typhoon signal number 1 because of Conson, since Conson has entered the 800-kilometer range of Macau. And for China, I'm not sure, but I
There's
think
a blue
yet.
typhoon warning for
really?
Conson.
well, that's that.
Yeah.
Vietnam, I'm not so sure either. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So Hong Kong.
either.
So to recall, Hong Kong nothing. Macau signal number 1. China in oh god. China in blue typhoon, and Vietnam don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, we're
That-
not sure on
that's
that
that.
one at the moment. Keep sending in your questions. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. A lot of questions about the model run, which we use, is on WSV3, which is what me and Thomas generally use most of the time. Certainly on our Atlantic coverage. Let's see what other questions we have. Will Chanthu intensify once again back to Category 5 status? Do we all think it's going to happen, or is there some reservations about that forecast?
I mean, looking at the environment around Chanthu, that is possible. I don't want to say it's certain, but it has a possibility in it. After Chanthu clears back its eye. That's all I could only say for now.
Isaac, you're looking at at that imagery once again on the infrared, a more clearer version of what we show, because we show the backing imagery as well. Those cloud tops looking pretty impressive. What do you think of the structure of the eye wall?
Well, obviously, I think it's still maintained a little bit here. Just really the only thing that the storm needs to do right now is clear out its eye, and it'll be all set to go here. The storm has really had a history of really wanting to keep its pinhole eye here, and we'll see how big this next eye becomes. But yeah, like I said before, I am noticing a little bit more minus 80-degree cloud tops around the sometimes overcast than what the other pinhole eye phase. With that, I saw a lot of them on the northern quadrant, really, for the most part.
Yeah, but they'll
eastern quadrant.
they'll end when the eye drops, though.
Some storms actually increase a little bit in the CDO temperature department, so I'm not.
Well,
I'm
if
not
it does, then
100%
it'll be
sold
even
on it yet.
stronger. You would
I'm
think.
not 100% sold on it, but I mean, regardless, no matter how you slice it, looks to be a dangerous scenario that's going to be unfolding for parts of Luzon and Taiwan. But yeah, this is what the storm looks like right now. It was so weird. It kept its pinhole eye for what, nearly 2 days, I want to say, and that's pretty remarkable for especially a Western Pacific storm of that magnitude.
Absolutely. Don't know where my other imagery has just gone for the moment. We're almost finished here for this hour of discussion, so we've got a few more minutes for questions. But Isaac, someone was asking earlier, and another question for it again, a storm that we can compare to Chanthu. A lot of people like to compare things to other things, I guess. Anything that strikes you?
Probably The only thing I could think of off the top of my head here, and I just woke up, would be Typhoon Goni 2015, but like the track cut in half instead of it. Because this didn't form near the Mariana Islands. That.
Oh no. Well, yeah, I thought Goni a couple of days ago actually. Yes.
Because it did a similar track to this. It pretty much went due west northwest, and then did that sharp northern turn, and strengthened as it did so.
I always get confused between Goni and Kopu, though.
Oh yeah, those were similar storms from what I recall. And again, those were back. That was back in 2015 when we had Goni, not this last year's Goni. That was a completely different.
Although some
beast.
people were starting to compare it to that as well, because of what it was doing.
I could see some similarities to it, but I mean, we'll see. Like I said, if it ends up completing this piston cycle, if it has a little bit of difficulty doing so. But so far, before this, it's been doing decently in terms of at least trying to maintain near at category 5 intensity.
All right. Zenitsu, before we finish, we're almost finished here. Any other information you'd like to bring to us from the Philippines, from Pagasa, etc.?
Well, I have already discussed, so I'm just going to reiterate. Signal number 1 warnings are in effect for a significant portion of northern Luzon. As we all know, heavy rainfall is to be expected starting tomorrow afternoon. And severe winds can reach up to signal number 4 in the coming days once Chanthu comes closer to the Philippines. Storm surge is also one of the bad impacts that the storm is going to bring. We have seen Pagasa state that a storm surge watch was in effect, meaning a storm surge of up to 2 meters is going to be expected for the system. And very rough seas, obviously from for the coastal waters. For fishermen who are doing their job, you might want to stay away from the sea for now because it's going to get very rough in a while.
You think?
Yeah.
I think so too, just to say the least there.
Well, this storm could possibly move. Well, the forecast track is very, it can change at any time, so we might have a landfall or we might not. But even if there's going to be no landfall, the impacts are still going to be felt throughout those areas near Chanthu, and everyone near the track must prepare immediately and evacuate if needed.
Yes, well, we've got a busy day ahead. I'm not sure how we're planning to do our coverage, but we've got 5 tropical cyclones active around the world, so we're trying to cover all of them as best we can. I believe there's an update on Larry coming up later, but our next live event will probably be in the evening once again, UTC, similar time to last night probably. That's in the morning local time in the Philippines, where we'll probably pick up again on the latest on Chanthu. It is still the headline storm out of those 5. So a very severe situation with over 60 million inside, a 10% chance of 50 knot winds. So could be a very destructive storm, especially if it keeps up on that intensity. But from my team at this hour of coverage, thanks very much to them and to you for watching. We'll be back soon. But for now, that's all from us. Good night.